Welcome back to the Code of Conduct podcast, the podcast where we help children develop confidence, building discipline, and having a mindset of excellence. My name is Amin Touati, and today I have a special guest, Mrs. Mandy Field. She has been working with children for almost 40 years, teaching them and learn how to grow and build confidence. And she has worked with thousands of children during these years, and she's going to join us today and share a little bit of her knowledge. Miss Mandy,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How's things?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Yes.
So, introduce yourself a little bit to the viewers.
To the viewers, yeah.
Watch a little bit of your background and your experience with kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you just said, scarily enough, I've been working with children for sort of about 40 years.
Okay.
You know, it was children or horses. That's what it was going to be when I left school, and I chose children. I did train as a nursery nurse, and I worked with children sort of for about 5 years until I had my own children. And then I did bits and pieces, you know. Sometimes I worked in schools, sometimes I worked in nurseries, sometimes I had children in my own home, taking care of them, you know, amongst other jobs. And then as my children got older, you know, I was working as support staff in a school. And although I enjoyed it, I kind of wanted to do more. I felt that that the experience that I'd gained, that I could do more. So sort of 20 years ago, I went, well, perhaps a bit more than that now, I went to and did a foundation degree, which is a 2-year university course. You then convert it to a full degree by doing a 3rd year. And by the time I'd done 3 years, I thought, wow, I might as well train to be a teacher. So that's what I did. It was not ever my plan to go into teaching, but that's sort of where I ended up. Most of my experience as a teacher has been within specialist schools, working with a range of different abilities.
Special needs, you mean?
Special needs, yeah.
Okay.
Although some of the children that I've worked with have been very much children that just couldn't cope in a mainstream setting, you know, in ordinary schools. So the ability range has been huge.
Okay.
Although I have also done lots of outreach work with in normal schools, supporting staff there, mostly sort of with behaviour challenges. Because for the sort of the last 16 years, I've been training staff and working with children to manage their behaviour. It's a holistic behavioural support training that I do, and within that we explore how we can teach children to manage their own behaviours, and you know, to think about how we can support them to develop their confidence. So that's sort of where I'm coming from.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, during these years, let's say from the day you actually started working with kids until today, what has been what changes have you seen in child development, comparing from the first years until today?
I mean, I think what I've seen more than anything is that the understanding that actually children don't all learn in the same way. You know, schools, certainly right up until I went to school, that you were taught in a certain way. Yeah. This was what, you know, the teacher stood at the front and they taught you stuff and then you did the work. You know, there was no deviation from that. But I think over the last 40 years, there's been a real understanding that not all children learn in the same way. Some need, you know, I'm certainly fine if somebody shows me how to do something. You know, I can't necessarily read instructions to do it, but if somebody shows me, I'm much better. So that, you know, I think it's being able to identify that different people learn in different ways. And I think schools are trying to adapt what they're doing, you know, to be able to accommodate the learning styles of everybody so that everybody can be successful and do things different ways.
I think it changed a lot for the last couple of years, you know. I remember when I went to school also a couple of years ago. Yeah. It was, this is the frame, you fit in.
Absolutely.
Or you don't.
That's right.
So they didn't really focus on your strength or weaknesses.
No, not
It
at
was
all.
very like, okay, you do math, you do science. If you're good, you're good. If you're not,
No,
then
stay
you
in
just
your-
stay in your lane. Just go
Absolutely.
and do something.
Yeah.
Which is sad, because I think a lot of kids could have done a lot better.
Yes.
If they had the same understanding that they have today.
Absolutely.
But even today, I don't think all schools do it. They're still
No.
slowly coming out of it. I think they understand it more, but you
Yes.
still have a lot of the old mindset, so to speak.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I also think when you look at some of the entrepreneurs in the world, for Richard Branson, for example, he didn't do well at school at all. But it certainly isn't because he's an idiot or because he's not clever.
Yeah.
He just didn't fit that school mould. And I think that's the thing, if you don't fit that frame, or if you didn't fit that frame, you were sort of cast to one side and left to get on and manage however well you could. But I think, there are quite a few entrepreneurs that didn't meet that criteria in school, but have gone on to do exceptionally well because they're more creative. They work in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think it's Alan Sugar. Well, he's Lord Sugar now, isn't he? I don't know if you know him.
No, I
he's
don't know.
somebody back in
But
the
there's
UK.
plenty of guys. I
but
think
there's
if you
a
look
lot
at the
of-
Facebook guys, the creators of Google, most
Absolutely.
of them never finished. Okay,
No.
I think they finished high school,
Yes,
but they didn't. They all dropped out of university. So could we argue that if you want to be successful, don't do university?
Well, it's interesting. I think that we've gone through a stage where the expectation is that children go to university, and that if they don't go to university, somehow they failed, because that is the pinnacle, isn't it? Or
Yes.
everybody's child has to go off to university. And I remember when my son went to university. He was living in halls for the first year, and there were 16 rooms on the floor that he was living in in that first year. And by the end of the third year, there were only 4 of them left in university.
Really?
Yeah, the other 12 had dropped out. So that's 75% dropout rate just on his little group. So how many young people are going to university because they feel that's what's expected of them, that's what parents want, it's what society wants, but actually it's not what they want. And I think we don't just need people going off to university and doing academic subjects. We need the more creative people, our artists, our chefs, all these kind of people that are doing alternative jobs, even down to, carpenters and bricklayers, possibly more relevant, in the UK, tradespeople, plumbers and things. But we need all of those people for a society. So not everybody needs to go off and go to university.
True.
I think sometimes they go because they don't know what else to do.
I think, like you said, it's more of a. I don't know if you're going to call it a status symbol, but it's more what people expect you
Absolutely.
to do.
I think it is.
You finish high school, you go to university.
Yes.
But let's say if every single person went to university, it wouldn't have the same
No,
value.
It wouldn't.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I
just
do.
like a certificate, And
Yes,
I've
yeah.
met a lot of guys who, master's degree, PhD, and they quit. Like they start that job. After a couple of hours, after a few years, they quit. They do
Yes.
something completely
Absolutely,
different. And you think
yeah.
like, okay, you've been studying for the
Studying
last
all
10,
that-
15
I know.
years. And put yourself in debt. Why? Is it
Yes.
because of the parents, because of society?
Absolutely.
I think society puts a lot of pressure that you have to be, quote unquote, educated. Like
Absolutely.
if you don't have a university degree,
That's right.
you're not really educated.
Absolutely. No, I know
I think
exactly what you mean.
That's a bad thing.
Yes.
So, with your experience, let's talk about kids a little bit and confidence. How can you build confidence in kids? Like a simple cookie cut. I know each kid is different, but
Yes.
like some foundational steps that you would like to share with us. I know you took some notes for this.
I did take some notes
please,
because
please share your
I've
notes.
got to that age where sometimes
Yeah.
my brain forgets what I want to say.
No problem.
No,
Please share your
I mean, I
notes.
think one of the key things to support children is to develop a positive mindset. It's, developing that I can do rather than I can't do. if we agree, if our children come home and they say, oh, I found this really hard, and if we just agree with them, go, oh, I know, I expect it was really hard, then they're going to believe that whatever that activity was really hard. And, if we can say, oh, I expect it was hard at the moment, but with a little bit more practice, you will get better at it. It's changing that, but you've tried it once. You can't expect to be great at anything first time around. You've tried it once. Now next time you try it. So it's encouraging that growth mindset that just because you find something hard, it doesn't mean we're going to stop doing it. We're still going to keep going. And I think that is possibly one of the biggest things that we can do for our children, is to be positive with what they're doing. Praise them. Praise the effort, praise the fact that they're trying something that's difficult. Saying to them, I'm sure you found that really hard, but well done for trying. Next time, you could try this. So it is making them realise that they have got to keep trying, that they can't keep hiding behind the fact that something is difficult or they didn't really get it the first time round. I think, for example, you think of babies when they first start to walk. If babies gave up every time they fell over, we'd be a world of people sat down, wouldn't we? Because nobody would persevere. And it's that same sort of principle, isn't it? We keep going. When a baby gets up and does those first few steps, we all get really excited, don't we? And the baby gets excited. And because they've had that positive reinforcement for what they've tried, they'll keep trying. And I think that's really what we can try to do as parents. I mean, we're not going to get it right all the time. And some days we're not going to feel very positive ourselves, because of work commitments. And, you might be tired. You might have deadlines to meet. There's all sorts of things going on in adults' lives as well. But if we can just sort of try to remember, sort of at the back of our minds, that if we can be as positive as we can with the effort that our children are putting in.
Okay.
So,
To continue on that question, what would you say are the biggest mistakes that parents do that you've seen that actually do the opposite, that kills confidence?
I think implying that they didn't try very hard. If they come home and say, "Oh, I did so and so, or I did really badly in a test," you could say to them, "Well, that's because you didn't try very hard. Did you do the revision that you were going to do?"
I have to admit, I do that mistake. I do that. It's natural,
Exactly. And I've done it before now as well. It's not, as I say, I think we have to be kind to ourselves as parents as well, because we can't always get it right. We're human after all. We all make mistakes. But if you can imagine that you've got a child who actually has worked really hard at revising for a test, and maybe the questions that came up weren't the ones they were expecting, or there are all sorts of things, or perhaps they just didn't do as well as they'd hoped, and then they come home, so they're already feeling pretty rubbish because they didn't do as, and then we say to them, well, it's obviously because you didn't try hard enough. And then they may well think, well, actually, I've tried this hard. Nobody thinks I'm trying, so I may as well stop. Do you know what I mean? So it can have that can have sort of a bit of a negative effect on it. And I think also that dismissing how they might feel about things, that fear and anxiety, if they've got to try something new, if they've got to go somewhere new. As I say, sometimes we all have days when we've got something new that we've got to do. It could be that they're taking part in a speaking thing at school, and they're really nervous about it. It's acknowledging that they feel nervous, rather than dismissing that. Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Oh, you're a confident person. Go on, off you go. They might be going, oh, but no, actually, I'm not. So it's acknowledging that it's okay to feel a little bit nervous or a little bit anxious. But, you have worked really hard to get to this point, and we know that you can do it. It's that reframing the language, thinking about how you say things and turning it from a negative into a positive.
But how would you break the cycle? Let's say I grew up a certain way. I think all of us, let's say you have your parents,
yes,
and they did the same thing. Oh, you're not pushing it hard enough, and you get really upset. But then as parents, we tend to to do the same thing. Even though as kids, we might say, I'm never going to be like my
I
parents.
know, yes.
You know, we all been there.
I
You know,
know,
I'm
I
not going to
know.
be like my dad. I'm going to be the
I know.
nicest dad, and
I
and
was-
then you become a dad yourself, and you tend to do the same thing again.
That's
Oh,
right.
you're not pushing it hard enough. You're not
Yes,
doing
right.
it. So how can we break that cycle? Like, how can we as parents? Where do we start? Like, how can we just no? We really need to go a new
change them.
direction. How can we change that?
I mean, I think an ideal way, if your children are old enough, is to sit down and talk to them. You know, have open conversations with them about, you know, as your parent, we want you to do really well. And I know that actually sometimes perhaps I'm pushing you a bit too hard. You know, these are the reasons that I do it. You know, as I say, my dad pushed me really hard, and I've got no other experience of parenting, so this is what I think we should do. But I sometimes think that maybe I am pushing you too hard. How could we work together so that I can support you to do well, rather than putting a lot of pressure on you? I mean, I think because quite often, you know, children, you know, a lot of the time we do know better.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's acknowledging that they are growing and developing and do have their own feelings and their own ideas about things. And it's looking at how can we work together to get the best for them, rather than insisting that, you know, we're saying, right, as the adult, you have to do this, this and this. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly when I was a teenager, the minute my mum told me that I wasn't to go here or wasn't to go there or wasn't to go and see this particular person, the minute they start telling you can't do things...
Yeah, you want to do the opposite.
Absolutely,
yeah.
you do. And I think it works, you know, if they're telling you, you must be doing this, you must be revising, you must be doing this, quite often they can push against it and it can be counterproductive, can't it? So I think having a conversation with them and acknowledging... Because it's a really valuable lesson for them to see that actually even our parents don't always get it right, you know, but they know that they need to change what they're doing and they're asking for us for help, you know, so it's working together. That would be sort of where I would start, I think.
Coming back to the parent and kid relationship, I know myself sometimes I think like, okay, I have to give them more responsibility. You know, they're becoming young adults. But sometimes I just want things to go quick. You know? Like with my daughter, for example,
Yep.
I said, 1 minute I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let her be responsible. You're gonna do your own homework. You're gonna do this. And then you're stressed and like, oh, okay, just come here, you know? Let me just tie your shoes. Oh, let me just do this for
Yes,
you.
yeah,
And
no, I get it, I do.
And she's like, no, I said, no, we don't have time now. And you just...
I know you do, I know. And it's and I
How-
think
you know?
it's really hard.
It's a
in
constant
those
struggle, you know?
It is, and in those situations, I think, you know, especially if you're rushing to get out of the door in the morning, or, you know, you're going somewhere, you know, and it is so tempting, isn't it, to do it for them. But it's that whole, that the more we do it for them, the less they're going to be able to do it for themselves. They'll become, you know, sort of helpless,
Yeah.
you know, because they're reliant on somebody else to do things all the time. I mean, I suppose in that situation, it might be worth trying to get her ready a little bit earlier, giving her an additional 10 minutes in the morning, waking her up 10 minutes early. I mean, I don't know if that would work, but something like that, because it just gives them that little bit of extra time then to do the shoelaces at the end of the situation. I suppose one of the other things, again, when my children were all younger, we didn't have mobile phones or anything like that. So as a distraction, they weren't there. I mean, my grandchildren do come and stay with me 3 nights a week. And I know that I have to say to them, put your phone down and come and get dressed, you know, because that is a distraction. So maybe it's having a rule around, okay, when you get up in the morning, you can have 10 minutes with your phone, whatever, and then I'm taking it away, and once you're ready, you can have it back. It's amazing how quickly they'll move once they know they can have their device back. But it is, you know, it is difficult, and I think that we are very quick to jump in and do things for our children.
What do you think parents can do to fight all this, like you said, now with the phones and everything? Again, I have the same issue every
Yes.
single day. The problem is that they have to use it in school, right? That's the
Yes,
argument,
yeah.
right? You need your laptop, you need this.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to check, even though I have all the apps. I can see what they search, I can see which apps they download, I can see, but I'm not gonna sit, like
And
for the
so
first
I
2-3
know.
days,
Yeah.
I was checking everything,
Yes,
and then
yeah.
I just gave up, and they know that.
Yes, of course.
So it's a constant battle, right? They're gonna use it in school, you know that. But you also want to stop them from using the other stuff, you know?
Yes.
Especially social media.
Yes, yeah.
There's a lot of confidence issues now with kids. They
course.
constantly compare themselves, girls, boys. Back in the
Absolutely.
days, I think it was more, you compare yourself with the friends you have
Yes,
in
that's
your
right.
neighborhood.
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah.
all you had.
Yeah.
Maybe you saw like a superstar on TV, like a little
Absolutely,
kid, and you
yes,
said,
yeah.
okay. But it was not... if you saw that superstar on TV, it was still like, okay, he or she is a star.
That's right, yeah.
You want to be like that person, but it
Yeah.
was still far away. You
Yes,
only had
yeah.
your neighborhood
Yes,
kids.
yeah.
But today, like the
They-
kids, they see their neighbors, another guy in school,
They have
flashy
access.
things. They
I
have
know,
access to so many things.
much.
Where do we draw the line? Like as parents, you want them to. I've tried everything. Taking
Yeah.
the phone completely.
Yes, yeah.
Giving them all access, half access. Nothing seemed to work. Like whatever I do, I don't
mean,
get
it's-
it right. So how can we fight this whole social media thing for kids?
It's such a huge issue. I think social media has just exploded, hasn't it? And it's got bigger than anybody ever anticipated. And while there are useful aspects to social media, you're absolutely right. We don't know what they're seeing on a day, and unless you are checking. I don't know. I personally think that the big social media companies could be doing more. They say they are, but I think they probably could be doing
No, but
more.
they
But
it's a money thing.
of course it
you
is,
know?
yeah.
It's a money thing.
Again, it's going back to your children and having those conversations with them. I think it's really important that as parents, we keep that open dialogue with our children, that they can come and talk to us and tell us things. Again, generationally, there were things that I wouldn't have told my mum because I knew she'd have been furious, or I'd have been embarrassed about telling her. But my grandchildren, they come and talk to me and they tell me all sorts of things. So it's creating that safe space for them, isn't it? That giving them the opportunity to come and talk to you about things, and asking them, so what is it? Who are you chatting to today? Who is this? Not sort of heavy-handedly, but just, so who are you talking to just now? What are you talking about? And they'll probably go, for goodness sake, Dad, leave me alone. But I think that if they know that you're asking, that you're interested in what they're doing, they may then share with you, and you can then share with them your concerns about some of the things. Ultimately, they will do, if they've got a device, they will do whatever they want to do with them, won't they?
Yeah.
And I think it's building in those conversations from an early age. And I think for some of our children, we didn't have the opportunity for that because phones weren't around, and then all of a sudden they were and everybody's got one, But I think, giving them the opportunity to understand your concerns around it. And that links in then with responsibility, doesn't it? Because you could say to them, I don't want to be checking up on you and seeing I want you to show me that you can be responsible. But if I find that, that actually you are looking at things you're not supposed to be, then am I going to have to take your phone away from you? It's...
But they still...
I know they do.
Like, that's what I said earlier. I tried everything.
I know. I don't know what the answer is really around phones.
Whatever I've done, they always find some kind of... And I'm sure I would have done the same thing. I'm not saying
I think we all would have done.
So it's a constant battle. I spoke with their school teachers, and the school teachers saying the same thing. They said, we're fighting this every
day.
single day.
Yeah.
They go train somewhere. In my academy, for example... we even got like a lot of books for the kids to read between the classes because we really want them to read. But who wants to read a boring book?
I know when
you have social media, Are you going to read about grizzly bears and dolphins, or you're going to look?
I know.
You're going to look at some cool videos on Instagram.
Yeah.
So even with all those books, there's zero interest.
I know.
And I don't know how to fight it. You
No.
know? I think most parents are really
I
struggling
think
with
you're
this.
absolutely right. I think a lot of parents
Is
are.
there a solution?
I don't know. I mean, I know back in the UK.
You think routines or anything can have, you know?
I mean, I do think that as I say, back in the UK, some schools are now making children put phones away when they come into school, so they'll have a box, and the children.
Yeah, my kids have that. They need to put it in a box.
They don't use their phones during the day at school.
Yeah, theoretically, yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I think some schools are having some success with it.
Okay.
In the UK. But I think, it's something that you need to start when your children are very small, and it's that limiting their screen time and having those conversations, talking to them, using a little bit of screen time and then, playing games, reading, doing other things as well. I don't know that if it's ever going to make a difference, because social media and technology is with us now, isn't it? It's not going to go away.
No, you can't run away from it. No.
Not at all. And I don't really know. I mean, I think education around it is a big part of it, both in schools and as parents. But as you say, it's that policing it, isn't it? How do we keep on top of that? You've got 3 children, haven't you? How do you spend the time going through all of their phones every day? You can't, can you?
And they know that.
Of course they do. And of course, as they get a bit older, they'll want that level of privacy. So I don't know. I think it's just chipping away at that, maybe because there's a thing on the news that Australia are banning children under 16 from accessing social media altogether. They're bringing a new law.
That's a good thing. But can they actually do it?
I don't know. How do you do that?
How can you, if you're 12 and it says, oh, you need to be 16, click yes if you're 16.
Oh, no. Of course, yeah. Yeah. And yeah. I don't know what the answer is to social media. I think there are some good parts about it, but there are also... I think one of the big things is that children can't get away from it.
Yeah, even adults. I'm not going to lie to you.
No, I know.
It's very addictive.
It is, yes.
It's very addictive.
Yes.
But how strict should you be? Let's say we have 1 to 10. I know myself where I am, but I think you know already.
I do.
But you have let's say the army dad, super strict.
Yeah.
Sit down, don't raise your voice, do what I tell you to do. Might even get a little bit with his hands every now and then, you know. And then you have the opposite, like, no, you do. What's the saying they say? You do you, do whatever. Yeah. You just relax and be your own self. Where's the balance? Like, how strict would you lean more into that in today's age? Because I know back in the days, I think the general population was more leaning to the army way.
That's right, they were, yeah.
And then they almost went extreme to the other way.
Yeah.
Where should we stand?
I mean, I certainly think we should be above the 5, between 5 and 10.
Yeah.
Maybe not 10, because I always feel that, from my perspective, 10 is really hard to maintain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Being, that tough
really
all the
strict,
time,
yeah.
that consists, I kind of think maybe sort of a 7-ish. Because children, we need boundaries. They need to know that there are some things they can do and some things they can't do. And you've got to be consistent with that. That doesn't mean to say that there aren't times when you go, oh, okay, this time I'm going to let you do that. But I think children need to have boundaries right from the word go. Because then they know what they can and can't do, and then they feel safe. And quite often, when you've got small children, your boundaries are around keeping them safe. You're not going to let them run out into the road because it's not safe. They're not allowed to play with the kettle when it's hot because it's not safe. So we put boundaries in there, don't we, to stop them from doing those things to keep them safe. And then I think that we should keep that going in all aspects of life, because there are rules and regulations, aren't there? Let's be honest. We all have to abide by them. So, the earlier we can incorporate that into our children's lives, the easier it is. But I think the biggie is consistency. Whatever it is you decide are your non-negotiables, they're the ones you have to stick with.
Okay.
It may be that as your children grow up, they have to keep their bedroom tidy. They might have to do jobs like emptying the dishwasher, whatever it is. If you want to get your pocket money or whatever it is that you have at the end of the week, you have to do these jobs to be able to, and if you don't do it, then you don't get that, and it's being consistent with that so they know that these are the things they have to do.
Okay.
And that's, it's good for their self-development, learning to be reliant on themselves and understanding that other people aren't always going to do something for them.
So what advice would you give to parents who, let's say they have teenagers or tweens, which is a very, I'm not going to use the word dangerous age, but it's a very, difficult,
challenging, yeah.
So what advice would you give to parents? Because like you said, you want to be very strict in a way, but at the same time, you have to respect the fact that they're now becoming their own.
Absolutely. And you do have to let them go. We do have to let them go and go off and do their own things.
How far, you know what I mean? Like
yes, yeah. It's a gradual thing, isn't it? I think, I suppose it depends what it is they want to do. If I suppose it's slightly different here, isn't it, to the UK? That the children aren't getting the bus home from school on their own. Things like that.
Yeah.
So it's if they want to go off out with their friends, if you're going to drop them, for example, drop them at the mall for the day, and then you say to them, okay, I'm going to be back here at 6:00 to pick you up. That's your first test, isn't it? Because if they're not there at 6:00, then the conversation becomes, but actually, I asked you to be back here for 6:00 and you weren't. So therefore, can you be trusted to come out on your own? Do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a test for them, isn't it? Yeah. And they'll come out with all sorts of excuses around.
I was just thinking about that.
Yes, yeah, there will be all sorts of
excuses. My phone died. This happened.
Absolutely. But it's understanding that. Sometimes we have to meet deadlines, and if so, we don't know what parents might have to be going on to do after that. And if we're going to pick them up at 6:00 because a parent has to drop them home and then go off to a work function or something, what are other people's time constraints as well? So I think those kind of things, certainly giving them, a bit of control over their money. Okay, so I'm just saying whether they have an allowance or something, this is your money for the month.
Yeah. This happened with me. I had my son got a gift. I think it was 300 dirham or something. And me and my wife spoke to him and said, okay, now you're a teenager, you're responsible. Yeah. And, you choose, it's your money, right? But my wife told him, I want you to be responsible. Don't buy anything stupid or something. Mm-hmm. Don't go buy candy for 300 dirhams or something. And I took him to the mall, okay? And I went home. As soon as I came home, he called me and he's like, I just got a watch for there was some, they saw it was a little kid. They stopped him.
Yes.
And they show him something shiny. Yes, and he was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it was super expensive for what it was, right? And me and my wife had this argument because I said, okay, but that's a good lesson for him. But she said, no, that was a big mistake. And she told him, you shouldn't have bought that. It's super expensive. I want you to return it. And So between me and her, I said, no, let him have it. Let him suck it up. Let him take the hit.
Yeah.
But we ended up returning it, So he returned it, he got the money back. So again, even between parents, you have your different mentality. I'm thinking like a Jiu-Jitsu guy, right?
Yes.
Okay, you lose the fight, okay, take it, go back again.
Yes, yeah.
But she has a different kind, like a mother kind of, no, I don't want my kids to do any kind of mistakes,
It's, I can see both sides of that. I can see the whole, that was... Next time somebody comes, I know my daughter came out to Dubai a few years ago, And she was at the mall, not at Dubai Mall, but the one across the bridge.
I don't know. So too many
I can't remember what it's called, but the little one across, and she got caught by some women selling perfume.
Okay.
And before she knew where she was, she'd bought this perfume. You know, she didn't want it, but you get to a certain point, don't you? And she was really cross with herself because she'd bought this and she didn't want it. You know, but it is a lesson. We've all been there. I've done it. You know, been caught by these women that, you know, tell you that they've tried this beautiful stuff on the back of your hand and just think your face will be like this and you'll look 10 years younger. Yes, I'll buy it. And you get it home and you realise it doesn't work in quite the way they said it would, you know, and you've spent a huge amount of money on stuff that actually you're probably not going to use again. So I think it is a valuable lesson to learn that, you know, we have to be able to say no to these people. It's their job. They're not going to be offended because you say no. And I think sometimes we don't like to say no to people, do we?
No, even though you don't want it.
I know.
You're too, and they know it.
Of course they do.
They know you don't want to say no, so they keep pushing it and pushing it.
Absolutely, that's right, yeah. But equally, I understand your wife's point of view. You know, they've taken advantage of my son. I'm not going to allow him. I'm not going to allow them to do that.
That's exactly what she said,
yes,
you know?
Yeah.
Like they saw a young little boy and they took advantage, and, you know, so she was really upset, you know? Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how.
But it is. But hopefully he will have learned a lesson from that.
Yeah, I hope so.
You know,
I hope so. You think doing martial arts like Jiu-Jitsu can? What's the benefit of doing Jiu-Jitsu or any other martial arts for kids? If you talk about like building confidence, or you know, just being more disciplined.
Well, I think you know, any kind of martial arts, you know. Is of benefit physically, isn't it? Because it's exercise. You know, we need to be doing a certain level of exercise, certain amount of cardio. You know, it will be good for those children who might struggle a little bit with their gross motor skills and coordination. So physically, it's really good for them to be doing it. And also socially, because it's a group activity, isn't it? You know, they're interacting with other children or teens, you know, as they're doing it. And, you know, we are social beings, aren't we? You know, so it's nice to have some time. So from that point of view, you know, I think it's really beneficial. But I think that developing, you know, the more they come, the more and the better they get at doing things, you know, it does build their confidence because they know, well, actually, when, you know, and that's where that positive language comes in, you know, because parents can say, well, do you remember when you first started?
Yeah.
You said that this was really hard and you were never going to be able to do it. And look at you now. You know, you're on your green belt or whatever it is. You know, so it's praising that effort. And then they can feel, well, yeah, actually, I can do this. You know, look how far I've come. And when you're more confident, you feel better about yourself. You know, so your self-esteem grows.
Yeah.
You know, so it's easier for you to manage your emotional state. I think when you feel good about yourself, you know, you're more prepared to do things. You're more prepared to be nice to people. I think people who feel good about themselves are probably going to be kinder to the people around them than people who are feeling really rubbish about themselves. So I do think, yeah, Jiu-Jitsu has got a great role to play in building confidence.
You think it's important to have goals?
Yes. I do think it's important to have goals.
Like, how big of a difference do you think that would make for someone if you have two kids, one who really is focused on his or her goals, writing it down and, you know, with a follow-up, or someone who just shows up?
Yes. I think it's something that you would probably have, you know, you'd learn to develop. Some people probably drift through life quite successfully doing things without making goals. But I think if somebody is very focused and determined to get somewhere or desperate to reach a certain stage with something, I think having the ability to create goals is really helpful. And I think it's something that you can be doing, as I say, in the home environment with your children from a very small age. You know, as soon as they are able to, you know, it could be just as simple as, you know, helping with the washing up. if you help me with the washing up today, we can go to the park today. Do you know what I mean? So it's starting very small.
Small goals, yeah.
And then maybe if they say, obviously depending on their level of understanding, how old they are. But, as they get bigger, well, you said you were going to help me with the washing up and you haven't. So therefore, I haven't got time to take you to the park. You didn't keep your side of the bargain. So it becomes a two-way thing. And they begin to learn that to get anywhere in life, and this is where discipline comes in, there are things that we have to do to get to a certain point. And then they can grow, those goals can grow, can't they? It may be in the early stages that, they do that for their weekly allowance. That if you want to get your weekly allowance, these are the things you have to do. And as they're building those routines and those expectations, they can then go on, and then you can say to them, well, actually, if you want, I don't know, maybe they want to get the latest the PlayStation or
Can
Xbox.
we say phone?
Phone? What? Yeah.
Should we say phone?
Phone,
Yeah.
absolutely. The latest phone. It could be I'm prepared to give you half of the money for the phones, but how are you going to earn the other half? And it's things like that, and it's building that into who they are. And then that will then sort of transfer. If you know that you want to be, to get the next belt in your jiu-jitsu,
You have to do certain
you
things.
have to do certain things. But it's building those routines, that that discipline of doing things. And I think as parents, we're also then modelling. Well, actually, you didn't help me with this job, and now I've got to do it because somebody has to do it. We're modelling that sometimes we have to do things. Quite often, we have to do things that we don't really want to do. But we have to do them, because if we don't do it, these things won't happen.
Interesting. So as the last question, if you could give one thing to all our viewers, to all the parents that are watching, if there's one thing they could change this week, only one thing, to improve the relationship between them and their kids, or improve maybe their confidence or discipline, one thing you believe they should change, or something you can recommend to change just for this week, or starting this week, one thing only.
I think one of the biggest things that we can give our children as parents is time. And I think the way society has developed, everybody is very busy, and I think sometimes we're too busy to spend time with our children. That doesn't mean that we're not, being in the same house as them or the same apartment as them every day is not the same as spending time with them. And I think, we had people that used to live next door to us, and this was pre-phone days, but they used to, they had 3 children, and at the end of the day, they would all sit round the table together, and they would talk about what had been the best bit of your day. And during dinner time, for half an hour, they would talk and they would share that information. And as the children have got older, that was what they remembered about growing up. They used to look forward to dinner time, because dinner time was where they would chat together as a family. And I appreciate that sometimes you can't have the whole family together for all sorts of reasons. But just find it, even if it's 15 minutes a day, where you might play a game with them. Again, put these phones away. For some of the younger children, sit and read a book to them. Let's sit and look at a book together. Let's talk about what would you like to do at the weekend. Just that focusing.
Quality time, yeah.
Quality time, and I think that's the thing. I think sometimes we miss out on quality time with our children. When many years ago now, I was a single parent for a while, and I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet. I was very lucky. My parents just lived up the road, and they had the children a lot for me. But there were times when a friend would come and babysit, and in my mind, I was working hard so that I could provide for the children, and I knew they were safe. But it wasn't until many years ago that my daughter said to me she used to hate it that I would go off out, even though I was working, because she felt I was leaving them with somebody else while I went off. Well, that never occurred to me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that as children, we need our parents. We want them to be there. We want them to spend time with us. And I think, all the fabulous things that children can have nowadays, do they remember all these things? If you were to ask children what they had for their last birthday, how many of them would remember? But they would probably remember that every day, in the evening or whenever it is, they get to spend some quality time with one of their parents.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, is one of the most important things we can do.
Interesting. Ms. Mandy, thank you very much for
That's
coming.
right.
It was
My
great
pleasure.
having you.
It's been lovely to be
Guys,
here.
there you have it. Try to spend at least 15 times a day with your kids, maybe even 30 if you can. I want to thank you guys for watching another show of the Code of Conduct podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with other parents, subscribe to the channel, and keep striving for excellence. See you next time. Peace.